smartest people on a very, very wonky area of public policy in Texas. Not everybody can understand the school finance laws. He was really a key figure for us to try to rearrange and modernize how we fund public education in Texas and how we've done that. So Charles stepped in some big shoes, but I'm proud to say he's walking in the right direction. We're in that another pair. So we're happy to have Charles here with us today. Sitting next to Charles is Ernest Bales, one of my favorite colleagues in the House. Ernest he's up to Cinco. There's Ernest Bales the 5th, Cinco, and so Ernest Bales the 4th. So he comes from a long line of folks in Southeast Texas, in San Jacinto County, I believe, and his home originally, his old home place. But he served several counties down in rural Texas. Our districts are very similar, and nobody's been more. His wife is a teacher, and nobody has been more dedicated to protecting and doing what's right for the children of Texas and public education than Ernest Bales. So, Ernest, thank you for coming up and joining us today. And then sitting to his left is my good friend Stan Lambert. He's obviously much older than me, but I have been the senior Wildcat, and he will now be taking that title. And I could not be a better person to represent Abilene, Texas, and our university, and importantly the children in of Taylor County and his Cunningham County, I believe, where Judy's family's all from. And so, but served on the school board, be president of the school board back in the day with Abilene ISD. So all these guys have a wealth of experience. They're not just up here kind of talking platitudes about education and what it means. They've been in the trenches, they've been in the wars, but most importantly, their hearts are in the right place for education and what's best for the next generation of Texans. So with that, Les, why don't you come up here and give you guys a bad time.
Good morning, everyone. I'm coming to this role, like Travis mentioned, after a career, really, 28 years in the newspaper industry. But my wife is wrapping up her 31st year in public education in the classroom. Her parents, my in-laws, both retired from public education after nearly 40 years of service. So public education, quickly became quite important to me after I first met my wife. And it wasn't quite the leap, perhaps, to move from the newspaper industry into public ed. And it's always been something that I've had a soft spot in my heart for. Something I remember Travis bringing this up a few months ago. But just think about everybody has got some connection to public education. Did you go to a public school? I did. Do you know somebody who teaches in a public school? Do you have kids in a public school, or grandkids, or nieces or nephews? So this is a wide-ranging topic that what these guys do today, what they did yesterday, has far-reaching impacts and influences on what takes place in this state. So let me grab my book of questions here. Today's topic: Yearn to learn and learn to earn. It's the future of education, workforce, and development here in Texas. So, for the past several years, and I remember when this happened, the state of Texas decided, with the guidance of the legislature, decided to put more emphasis on courses and workforce development for those students that may not quite be that perfect fit for college or university. And there was some concern, and it probably was true and well-founded, that those students were being overlooked and not properly served by public education. So there's been some things that have taken place the past 10 years. And I can speak from personal experience here in my own immediate family that you can draw a line with my son from when he entered high school as a freshman in 2014, which was after some important changes the legislature put in place the previous year. You can draw a line from him entering high school, choosing a pathway in CTE, to his college degree, to the industry he works in today that's closely related to ag technology. I mean, that's had an incredible impact on his life and on our family. So this is important things here that we're going to be talking about. So these three gentlemen here, I don't know that any of you were actually in the legislature in Austin back in 2013, but you've been there for the past several years. So we want to talk about how did lawmakers come to see these types of jobs and this kind of curriculum in related to workforce development and career and technical education as holding enormous importance, and not just for those students headed straight to the workforce, but also those students who will find themselves on the way to a college or university, like my own son. So let's talk a bit about how we arrived where we're at today and what this means for the state. And Representative Lambert, you're closest to me, so we're going to start with you.
Thank you very much. Just very briefly, I think Travis covered my resume, a little bit about my background, but I did spend about 10 years on the Abilene ISD's Board of Trustees, 6 years as chairman, and my wife retired after 36 years of public education. She was a first grade teacher for about 2/3 of that time, and then she moved into administration. So all of my family, my sisters, my wife's sisters, have been teachers and have been involved in public education for a long, long time. So that's really what spurred my interest in running for school board a long time ago. But it also kind of helped me prepare, I think, for this job that I have now as a legislator in making policy for education in Texas. And so I think that we recognized even before COVID the need for us to provide these pathways, and so alternative pathways that would lead to some type of certification, or at least a minimum type of license or certification by the time students graduated from high school. And so that was very intriguing to me while I was on the school board, and then in the first 2 or 3 sessions of being in Austin. How we were going to do that, how we were going to fund it, how we were going to make sure that we were accounting for it, that we had the accountability and transparency that we need in all of education. So we had been studying that and doing some things in Abilene already to address some of those issues. I think COVID then exacerbated the fact that workforce and making sure that these students learn a skill or have some specialized training by the time they leave high school was even more important. Why? Because you didn't have to drive very far in your communities to find help wanted signs, right? There were jobs that were available. For some reason after COVID, people didn't return to their jobs as quickly, and maybe that's to do with some of the subsidies and the way people were being, financing their lifestyle and what was going on at home. But obviously the need is there now, and the workforce requirements are even at the highest peak, in my opinion, and may even get higher because of the shortages that we're having in certain areas like teaching and nursing and in so many other areas. So we continue to look for ways to reward and incentivize. I really appreciate, we have a Texas State Technical College in Abilene and Sweetwater in 2 locations in my district. I have Nolan County just to the west of Abilene, and then Taylor County. And so TSTC has been a really good partner in their funding strategy, and their funding formula is one that I really embrace, and I know my colleagues do as well, because they don't get paid until their students have a job after they finish their 2-year education or whatever the skill level that they're trying to acquire. And so, it's performance-based, and TSTC doesn't see those dollars roll into their budget and into their bank accounts until those students actually do show that they have finished their education, finished their requirements for whether it's welding, whether it's electrical or plumbing or whatever the need may be. But I really like that. I think that we tried to move some of our community colleges more to that type of funding strategy as well in this last session. So I applaud the fact that we see the need to incentivize and to reward and make sure that those programs are performance-based and that they are delivering the results that we expect.
I go back a lot like Stan. So my wife is a school teacher. She's teaching right now at back home at the same building where her grandfather's name is on the plaque outside, because he was acting superintendent whenever they built that building. So education is very dear to me. And from the vocational standpoint, I was very blessed growing up on a family dairy and a beef cattle operation We ran heavy equipment and such, ran commercial trucks. I learned a lot of stuff that you take for granted when you've always been exposed to that. So I built my first house when I was 17. You learn a lot in that process. I welded for a little while out of college, still have a current health card and a Class A CDL. I'm gonna be able to make a living. So, and as I work a lot of kids, there's some really important things that it's hard to learn in the classroom. You have to be able to work people and work with people. And I tell someone, I said, I pay you to think as much as I pay you to work. If I have to think for you and you pick up that phone and you ask me on every single thing, then I have no business paying you. And that's where like the JET program and a lot of our vocational programs, I mean, my oldest son who's starting A&M in the fall, he's at a judging contest this morning. It's through the FFA program. I mean, that's where you have the shop class, you have your building trades, you have welding, you have all that stuff. That gets kids ready to make a living. So I've got one of the fastest growing school districts in the state of Texas, Cleveland ISD, and they have a very robust welding program. And the number of certifications, and that is getting kids able to leave school, have a valuable trade where they actually can start producing for society and be a positive impact is right out of the gate. So I think that traditional education system, I mean, we have to still have a focus on that, but I'm really glad that we transitioned back to teaching trades because that's important. I mean, you look at where are the high-paying jobs? Around us, around the Gulf Coast, it's around the refineries. So if you can, if a kid knows what a twit card is, like forklift operator, I mean, anything like that, any of those opportunities help add value. You can still make really good money working with your hands, and I think we as a state did a good thing whenever we made that transition to acknowledge that again and help support that. Not every kid goes to college, nor should they, and that's not a problem.
Test. All right, good. It's on. Good morning, everyone. Charles Cunningham. Just a little bit about me, just to kind of keep it in line here. I was a school volunteer for 20. I was a school. We still got this background. Where's the sound man at? It's just the bottom right there. There you go. Left, right. There you go. Test. There. Sounds better. I was a school volunteer for 25 years. 12 as a volunteer and 12 on the school board. We mentioned Chairman Huberty. Actually, Dan and I served on the ISD school board. Okay, we don't have a problem with this.
Hey,
mic. I
Charles,
see that now.
Charles, why don't you turn yours off, use Ernest.
Turn your mic up.
No, it's up. Just turn it off and swap it up here. Good. As I said, I was on the school board for 12 years. Part of that term, I was able to serve with Chairman Huberty. I too come from a family of educators. My great grandfather started the first school for African Americans over in the Giddings, Lexington area. Doak Springs was the community, started that. And so mostly all of my parents, siblings, and everybody's a school teacher. I wasn't a school teacher, I was a school board member. But for me though, I married a school teacher. My wife's a school teacher. Taught for some 26 years before she decided to retire when I retired. But she was a CTE teacher. And so we're talking about 2011, I believe, is when we looked at the need for it. But coming from the suburban area, one of the things that we did as a school district, we actually tried to bring businesses and parents to the table to say, what do we want our graduate to look like? What is that portrait of a graduate? And so with that, with working with the business and stuff, we found out exactly what that graduate is gonna be. It's not always about the STAR test, but I think as my colleague mentioned, where we're gonna be in the future. And the prime example that I like to talk about is my own son. I have 3 girls and 1 boy. Boy, he's the baby. And of course, like with all boys, it takes us a while to get it. And so, it does. You know, because, you know, he was graduated from high school and, you know, we saved all this money to go to college and stuff. And, you know, he went to college, you know, found out though, I kept looking at his car, you know, the books were still in the wrapper. Never busted a book open. I think the tail sign of it was when the grades came. And I was asking for the grades and he was kind of, you know, taking his time. When I finally got the grades, I kept looking at the paper trying to make that other leg fit. It was straight F's. And so, you know, I decided, I said, well, son, I'll tell you what, I don't think college is for you. I said, but I think I know a place for you. And so I got him up, drove him down to the armed forces place, and I said, pick a door. I think somebody will take you. And of course, you know, that night he went and told his mom, and I didn't get no sleep that night. You're not making my baby do this. But long story short, he ended up getting into a program, and I want to tell you, what was it? Instrumentation type program. Got into that program, graduated, and then got hired for Enterprise Products. But in the meantime, while doing that, then all of a sudden the light bulb went on and he clicked, and he went to college, and he graduated. And so, you know, but I'm just saying, you know, every child learns different, but we have to be able, you know, to give that child, any child, all the options we can, because sometimes, like you said, college is not for you. And so we know in the world that we live in today, and here in Texas, we're going to continue to need plumbers, electricians. And so that's why in my area, I'm working with those local businesses to reach out to those kids and to get them involved and say, okay, here's something that you might want to think about doing. And it's amazing, and I'll use myself as an example, because I was, you know, I wondered where my son got it from. He got it from me. Okay. I didn't go straight to college, you know, but I ended up going to college. Luckily, I was in the military and I had the GI Bill. But went to college, found out, you know, this learning thing was not that bad, and then all of a sudden, I'm in management. You know, so you never know. And I started out as a lineman, okay, climbing poles. Ended up working for a company called Houston Light and Power. Long time ago, turned out to be Centerpoint Energy. But it's those things like that to just say, you know what, we've got to provide opportunities. Plumbers today, electricians today, need at least some education and maybe a 2-year degree, but it's the best job when I was a lineman that I said, you didn't need a college degree to make 6 figures. And so that's what we have today. And so 2011 this started. But I think as we continue to go on, from 2011 to 2019 with HB, what was the bill you guys passed? 2019 HB3. And so we're still working on that with the things that are involved, and we'll talk a little bit more about it. But anyway, 2011 kind of started. Kick it back to you.
Well, Representative Cunningham, you mentioned electrical linemen. And that's today, that is one of the jobs out there that electricity providers are yearning to fill, because there's, you know, if you listen to them, they'll say there's a generation of linemen getting ready to retire, and they don't have the people in line to fill those. Gosh, there's very few jobs in our communities more important than that, because when the power goes out, you know, you can't do anything at home. You certainly can't have school. The business is shut down, so that's an important role to fill. Now, a couple of you all brought up just in passing standardized testing, and that's kind of prompted me to jump ahead here. And you know, one of the things that I wanted to bring up was how best can Texas not only continue to streamline and strengthen that connection that you all have mentioned with Texas workforce professionals and industry leaders on any number of topics, but one of the concerns that some have is related to how standardized testing and how it applies to workforce training, and maybe it's not testing the correct things to, such as Representative Bales, you mentioned thinking, critical thinking. You don't want them calling you, you want them to think things through and solve that as well. And actually, the panel sponsor today, Raise Your Hand Texas, has raised some questions about how the state relies on standardized testing. So what ways can legislators and the state continue to improve that communication with our industry partners and industry leaders, but also maybe address some things that maybe aren't being tested correctly or need to be tested in addition to, or the test itself be adjusted specifically in relation to workforce training and preparing for these trade jobs that are out there. Representative Bales, you're next in line. I'll let you go next.
If I've learned anything in this process, I start off most meetings with, assume I know nothing, let's start there. The worst thing that I could ever do is look at a classroom teacher situation from the outside in and think I know how to best tell them how to do something. But with that being said, I do know a lot of the issues that we have are, we don't actually get results until the end, and that's too late for that teacher to actually fix and address those. We put a ton of emphasis on that one exam. I mean, we'd actually worked 2 sessions ago on legislation, at least at the earlier years, to do more of a progressive model that fit with their time that the kids are already spending in a computer lab. We actually have the software there that can transition if they get this answer right, they get a harder one. If they get this one wrong, they get an easy one and actually sees and identifies what those issues are, so that that teacher can have that by the end of that day and actually model the curriculum that next week to help address that for those kids. My wife does RTI, response intervention, and she does the pullout and actually does the testing, identify the kids that have additional needs, and she's there to try to help fix that and help fill that balance so that that kid can be successful. I think the whole process, testing is important. We need to know where the kids are at. However, anytime you take a one-size-fits-all approach, it gets very difficult. School boards are, our independent school districts are independent. And we have the best locally elected representation, which is a locally elected school board. I think it's always important that we enable our locally elected school boards to help work with the curriculum directors, work with the teachers, and see how best to fit the needs of our kids and let our teachers teach. The problem is we don't let our teachers teach anymore. So if we would let our teachers teach, we let them identify what the needs of that classroom are, and we let them address that independently. I think the biggest point to drive home is when we had COVID and we did a lot of online learning. It's no different than if you sign up for a job which is in-person sales and all of a sudden you're a telemarketer. You don't see the look in that kid's eye. You don't see that aha moment when they catch on, or you can't tell when someone just kind of backed up from the process, got kind of quiet because they weren't catching on. The biggest asset that we have are our teachers, and we need to give them the tools with testing throughout the year, not a one-size-fits-all high-stakes test, but we need to let them identify what the needs of the classroom are and help those kids independently. And I think our high-stakes, one-size-fits-all testing is the worst thing that we can do to actually help our kids.
Representative Cunningham,
I'm not gonna add too much to what my colleague said, but I will say that what I've seen, and let me make another correction here. You said this panel here has years of experience in the legislature. I'm in my first term. But with that said, this last session, some of that was being addressed in HB 1605, which was our curriculum bill. Representative Bell mentioned about testing. We've had this all the way back to, I want to say it's Lambert, 2011, when we tried to minimize the number of tests because, there was just too much testing. Teaching, lockstep teaching, all of this was in play, and it was just too much, you know, but we still need to be able to measure what our kids are doing. We have to have a measure. And so the HB 1605 is the curriculum bill. Most of the superintendents in my district, when I asked them about it, they thought it was a game changer. And so I won't go into the details about it, but I think as we do this, we're going to get away from testing to the test, too much testing, but being efficient with our testing to just make sure that we're getting the proper measure for our kids. And you mentioned, you know, intervention. Those things are important so that the kids are properly being, you know, helped in their learning process as they matriculate. So I think it all starts with curriculum. It starts with the teachers. Teachers are the backbone of education. It's not the administrators, but it's the teachers. But it takes a, as they say, a village approach. You also have to have the parents involved. Parental involvement is the key also. I'll just stop there.
I'm not going to add too much to what my colleagues have said. I agree 100% with what they've given you as a summary. I would just say that you know, having been married to a teacher for a number of years, you know, whether it was TEAPS, TAX, STAR, whatever you want to call it, I think testing is a little bit overrated. I think we have relied too much in years past on one day, one test. I always use the example of you know, what would it be like in your college career if a professor just picked one test out of several and decided that was the test he was going to assign to your performance and your ability to learn, and it just seemed to be quite unfair. So we do need testing. We need to include that as part of a holistic approach, and who's better to do that than the classroom teacher? I don't know of anyone, even superintendents and associate superintendents and others that may have matriculated from the classroom into their current leadership positions. But, you know, I think the thing that kind of scared me the most when I ran for school board was realizing just how little choices I had to make, how few decisions I really had to make as a school board trustee. And that basically just meant that our instructions, our regulatory oversight and the rules were, you know, coming from the state. And I'm a local control person. I want to see decisions that are made locally. I think that's where the best decisions are made and impact the citizens and our students the most. And I would put more reliance on our local school boards to decide what kind of testing and just how much testing is needed in order to measure that growth and that performance. I do understand people want to throw away the STAR test and start over. And it's kind of like people say, I want to eliminate property taxes. Well, I'd love to eliminate property taxes, and tell me what you want to substitute for that. So whether it's STAR test or whether it's TEAPS or TAX or whatever you want to call them, we do need it, but we need to make sure that we don't overemphasize and give it too much weight in terms of what a teacher would assess and determine is to that child's performance and their ability to learn and progress.
Thank you all. I think all three of you mentioned the importance and the role of what happens in the classroom. And I've heard a number of people say this, including my superintendent right back there, Dr. Gabriel Trujillo, that really in a school district, there's two jobs. There's the teachers in the classroom, and then everybody else supporting the teachers in the classroom. So I'm glad to hear you say that. And we've talked about a few of the possibilities as well, or the few of the pathways that students can take in career and technical education, particularly high school. And I'm going to use my own district that I work for, Nacogdoches ISD, as an example. You know, students can leave Nacogdoches High School with those initial certifications that we've been talking about in EMT, auto technician, robotics, health science, law enforcement, construction and carpentry, culinary arts, marketing and sales, IT, cosmetology, military science, and even teaching and training. And to emphasize that last one, we've actually got some paraprofessionals working in our district right now that just very recently got their certification in their high school class to be a paraprofessional in a Texas Public School District. And maybe it's the first step towards, grow our own program for teachers. But I say all that to bring this point up. With any good program or programs, there's a cost. So let's talk about funding because, well, nothing is for free. And understatement of the year, none of anything we've talked about so far comes cheaply. To properly instruct these students in many of these areas is going to retire teachers, and not only teachers, but oftentimes teachers with industry experience. And it's going to require committed dollars to continue to make sure that happens. Somebody with industry experience, though, in many of these fields, might not quite be ready to come to work at a school district for a teacher space schedule, particularly here in rural parts of the state, like East Texas, where our salary schedules are, quite frankly, dwarfed by our population centers like Dallas, Houston, Austin, and San Antonio. Additionally, the state has apparently headed down the road of some sort of school voucher plan that is going to require some money as well. So, how best can these programs we've been talking about, not only here in Nacogdoches, but across the state, how best can those programs be funded properly, be protected, but also grown to meet, whatever the next technology is 5 years from now or 10 years from now? What's our best path then to protect that funding for these vital programs? Representative Cunningham, I'll let you go first on this one.
Trying to really kind of think how to really answer this question because I don't see it as a protection of funding, but I think when you've got programs that have and are showing that they have value, I think then once every biennium, when the public ed meets, those things need to be on the table. And I'll take this last biennium. The budget was $320 billion. 55% of that budget went to education. And let me correct that. 55% went to public education, but 20% of that went to higher ed, and the other went to public ed. And so there's dollars there. The programs, we all say it's all about programming. The main thing we need to understand too, if a program is not working, then why are we still using it? But if the school is able to go ahead and have programs that have value, that show kids are interested, just like in my district, we have pretty much the same thing with the programs that are there. We also partner with the area businesses, as I said, because not everybody's going to go to college right then. Maybe it clicks later on. But I think in a sense, you mentioned something about potential vouchers, ESA grants, whatever you want to call them. It looks like that's going to be, it has a better chance now of being a real possibility. And so the competition is here. But I will say this, even vouchers are not a panacea to education because they have their flaws too. And so when my superintendent and I looked at it, we're not afraid of the competition. We have a good school district. We have people trying to get into our school district, people moving from Houston, moving out to where we're at out in the suburbs. So it's how are you handling those programs? Do those programs have value? And those are the programs that are going to continue to exist. If a program doesn't have any value, then why are we still having that program? And there's quite a few programs. I think you said culinary arts. I think one of the main things I heard too is very into paraprofessionals with teachers. Correct me if I'm wrong. We already know that we have a teacher shortage. And so these are going to be the programs that I think have value. The funding will be there, and it's up to us on the table, on the dais, to make sure that we're properly funding public education, whatever program is going to be introduced, that we don't forget about public education, or what we want to say government schools, because it's government funding. And we need to make sure that the government is properly funding all areas, and that education matters for all children.
We're the 8th largest economy in the world, and yet we rank 41st, 42nd, depending on which media outlet you listen to, tells us how much we're funding per pupil in the state of Texas compared to the rest of the country. I was on the school board in 2010, 2011, when the state cut out $5.5 billion out of education. We cut 125 full-time positions in Abilene. And I'm sure many of you had to make similar cuts in your local school districts as well. We didn't recover from that. And we still have not recovered from that. We made an attempt in 2019 with HB3, which was a very good bill and a very strongly had funding involved, but to me that was really just kind of catching up from the last 8 years of having gone through a very traumatic, difficult time in our education system, in public education. So I don't think we're there yet, and I think we still have a lot of catching up to do, and certainly COVID exacerbated that issue, and I think that with inflation and other costs that have risen, school districts are just as affected as your business and as higher education and as other forms of institutions that receive state funding. And so that's been part of my issue with vouchers, is let's fund public education first. Let's take care of the people that are committed to the 5.2 or 5.3 million children in our public education system. The voucher program is to me, I think eventually you have a pot of money, because we don't have a dedicated revenue stream related to public education, although I think Ann Richards tried to do that back in '95 with our lottery money, right? And we all know where that went. So, you know, we've got to make that commitment, because we know that at the end of the budget cycle, and we only do a 2-year budget, so there's a pot of money. And there's going to be a day when we don't have a $20 billion surplus or a $33 billion surplus. I think I'm a retired banker, and I remember what the 80s were like in banking and across our state, when we were closing banks and we were closing savings and loans, and the economy, when oil prices dropped from $31 a barrel down to about $6 or $7 a barrel, we all experienced that headache. I don't have a crystal ball, and I'm not trying to leave you here with a lot of bad information, because I don't know. But I don't know that the Texas economy, although we're doing well, and I appreciate the fact that we are a state that has invested in determined to keep our businesses strong, our economy growing, and reducing regulations everywhere we can. And so I think that's a major reason why we have the largest business relocation that's occurring in the whole country, and why new companies are starting here and moving their headquarters to Texas. And so that's great, and I hope that continues, and I hope that we continue to provide that kind of leadership and that kind of philosophy for those companies to invest here. But there is going to be a day in which we are going to be walking into a January legislative session, and we're going to be looking at cuts. And when we look at cuts, we kind of do this across the board cut. And so if we have a voucher program in place, yeah, it's going to get cut. If we have this much funding, as Charles said, 50% of our general revenue budget is going into public education, or whatever that number is today. I think we've increased it certainly into the high 40s. But I remember when Chairman Huberty said, you know, even after HB3 in 2019, he said we still have a lot of work to do. We still have some progress that needs to be caught up. And I think he was referring back to 2010, 2011. So we have the funding available now, and I think we need to fund public education. We need to provide those salary increases to retain our workforce and to attract more young people into thinking about education as a college career. In order to do that, I think we've got to make some major commitments and make some major statements about how we feel about education in Texas. And I don't think 42nd or 43rd in the country is a good statement to lead with.
Sitting here trying to think of how best to address this. My background is not in banking, it's not in upper management, I'm just a plain old hammer. But I know how to look at a set of books, I know when the numbers add up. And quite frankly, the bills that were proposed, the numbers didn't add up. That is what we have to be cognizant of. We have to find out how to decouple public education and do what's best for the kids of the state of Texas and focus less on political gamesmanship. Because that's what our kids have became. They became a pawn for political advancement. We have let money come in and dictate how we represent our own districts. We have locally elected individuals. We have 150 House districts in the state, and they're all different. Charles's district is very different. The landscape of his public education system is very different than the ones that I have. I've got some of the smallest K-8 public school systems. I have one of the largest growing in the state. It's hard to address that, but we have to empower the individuals locally to represent and vote for what is best for the district. And we have lost sight of that. We have simply turned a blind eye to what is best for the kids of the state of Texas, because we had a great opportunity to give the public education funding as it is needed this session. But there was a choice to not allow that because we were going to hold that hostage with a school voucher. Because there's an individual who said, I have to have a win. And that is where our kids lost. We had the opportunity to better fund our public education, to help every kid. But because there was a political agenda, our kids lost out. And that's a problem. And I think rural Texas most of all lost out because there was a huge impact to the representation of rural Texas and the ability for individuals to stand up, speak their piece, to do what is best based on their convictions, based on the area they represent. Because of the political consequence, our job is to do what is best, take care and represent our district, damn the consequences. And that's where we're supposed to be.
You know, I'm going to slip off script here just a bit. Dr. Herrio, don't worry. But I know whether it was my wife, a 31-year school teacher, or their school administrators, or some of the other acquaintances I've made in the school business, when talk came, and I'm not even looking for a response from you guys here unless you want to jump in, but when talk came that a voucher might be worth anywhere from $8,500 to $10,500 per student per year, and the general allotment for the school districts is $6,160, that created some hard feelings. And you guys reminded me of that, especially you, Representative Bales, with what you just said there. We doing okay on time?
Yeah, we're good.
Okay.
Give it 5 more minutes.
I'm sorry, say that again?
5.
5, okay. So during this, the course of this panel, you guys have mentioned a number of times about working closely with industry partners, not on a statewide level, but on a school district level. And I know what my school district does that. And in fact, one of you invoked the JET program. That might have been you. Okay, the JET program, which I think we should make mention of the fact that Representative Clardy back here, I believe, authored that bill. Is that correct?
That's my bill, baby.
Okay. Well, last year, we added at our high school, in our CTE program, an EMT program. And we were fortunate to receive some of that money through the JET grant to install basically the business end of an ambulance. Everything but, the motor and the tires is fully stocked, and we have EMTs that come in and help teach that class. And we developed that program, and we're fortunate to get that money because of our relationship with our industry partners in Texas Workforce Solutions here in Deep East Texas that said, man, that's one of the shortages we've got right now. So we've got students that are maybe not fully certified to be an EMT, but they're well on their way when they leave our high school if they go through that program. So talk about the importance of continuing to link those needs of the individual communities. And I believe it was you, Representative Bales, who mentioned that, hey, there's 150 House districts. Each one of them has different needs. So talk about the importance, if you will, about continuing to build and foster that relationship between our industry partners here in our communities and what we offer in our school districts. And I think it's back to you, Representative Lambert.
Yeah, I'll make this very brief. I know we're running short of time, but I'll just tell you that back in 2005, we started a program in Abilene called Holland Medical High School. We partnered with Hardin-Simmons University. We had 3 private universities in Abilene. Hardin-Simmons was willing to allow us the building space so that students could start coming there and learning about becoming a pharmacy tech, get their initial training on becoming a CNA, dental hygienist, and we have now basically provided a pipeline because of the relationship between Hardin-Simmons University and then Hendrick Medical Center, which is our largest healthcare provider, the only healthcare provider, largest one in Abilene. So we've put together that partnership that is now producing at a time when workforce shortage is extremely vital for us to try to address. And that program has now been on the ground for almost 20 years, and we're seeing tremendous results as a result of that partnership.
I got to go to one of our chamber functions that was there in San Jacinto County. It was hosted by the Cold Spring High School, and they had the culinary arts program. They actually prepared the meal, did place settings, and actually served. There's no better way to get kids involved with the community than teaching them a skill, building that sense of community, and let them know that, I mean, the problem is we've gotten away from the model of this is where you grow up, this is where you want to raise your family, this is where you want to be successful and own a business at. And I think our CT programs are the single most important tool that we can teach our kids to enable them to be able to stay there, to be successful, and to be a part of the community in a very successful fashion. So however best we can foster that, I think that should be our top priority here going forward.
I'll keep this brief also too. I pulled this up. You know, there are, let me say, 28 local workforce development boards in the state of Texas. There was a bill passed this session, HB 4451, and what it does, it allows all these workforce development boards to coordinate with each other to know exactly what are going to be the needs in your different areas and stuff. And I think that's another important too. We talk about local businesses. You know, we got to use our advantages at the state level too, because we are, as Stan said, the 8th largest economy in the world. People are coming to Texas. They're coming to Texas and they expect to have an educated workforce. And so it's all of us coming together, trying to make sure that what we have here is an educated workforce. All of us in here today, we realize it's not about us, it's about the next generation. And so that's what we're gonna have to do.
Gentlemen, thank you very much. I see that Representative Clardy has stood up and headed this way, which is my cue to step away from the microphone.
Less than 10 minutes, we're going to step out at the little boys' girls' room, grab some coffee. Feel free to do that. We're going to start back sharply here at 10 o'clock with our next panel. I see some of our panelists have made their way in here. Session 2, critical condition, the landscape and trends for healthcare in Texas. So thank you again. I'll move around, we'll start back at 10 o'clock. Yes.